They were singing a song about a sweet little old lady who hammered a tent peg into the ear of a Canaanite general, and they were harvesting as they sang it. 25 young Israelite men, muscly, sun-tanned, their long hair tied back, big sweat marks under their arms. It wasn't a big field, it was pretty stony, but it was their field, their work, their harvest. The youngest man looked up. There was a dust cloud on the horizon, something coming towards them. They were all standing now. No need to speak. They knew what it was. They could hear the sound of thundering hooves and see the sun glinting on bronze helmets. Canaanites. They were getting nearer now, shimmering in the heat, and their horses reared and pawed as they came skidding to a halt. The Canaanite captain swung haughtily from his horse and stared deep into their faces. "Papers!" he ordered. The Israelites stayed silent. "Identity papers," he repeated. "We haven't got any papers," shouted the youngster. "Then move off this land. Order number 613, no unauthorized settlers. I'll give you 5 minutes." "This is our land," shouted the youngster. 4 minutes 30. "We were promised it by the God of the Israelites." 4 minutes. The farmer bent down and picked up a scythe. A Canaanite hand moved towards a sword hilt. 2 minutes 15. Then someone threw a stone, and another, and another. A soldier lit a torch and hurled it into the wheat field. A whip cracked, and an Israelite fell screaming to the ground. And suddenly, the field was full of pitch-black smoke and full-scale fighting, and there were cries of terror, and the whole field was ablaze. Another Israelite pitched forward, screaming. Now, it was Canaanite swords that were doing the harvesting, and the young man was running as fast as he could through the fields. He'd got to get away. Now wasn't the time to stay and fight. He'd got to hide! Got to hide! When he got back to the village, the young man dived behind a wall and lay there, panting. He wasn't frightened anymore, just angry, very, very angry. "How come this keeps happening?" he hissed. "If this is supposed to be our country, how come we get pushed off it all the time? How come every time we try and live decent, normal lives, our houses get bulldozed and our crops get burnt?" "It's obvious!" The voice came out of nowhere. "Stark, staring, obvious!" The young man was gobsmacked. A voice from heaven. What an amazing thing. "Then tell me, O wise one," he whispered. "Stand up and look over the wall." The young man did so. "Tell me what you see." I see a great big load of corn. I see the village square. I see my servant Pura cutting his toenails. Yes, all right, what else? On one side of the square, I see the altar of the God of the Israelites. And on the other, I see the altar of the goddess of the Canaanites. Exactly. Sorry? Suddenly, the corn began to move. It started swirling round and round. Out of it popped a raggedy, bearded man, all covered in husks and grime. It was a holy man, one of the tribe who looked after the God box, an Israelite on the run just like him. "It's that lewd Canaanite idol," he spat. "That goddess leering and jeering in the square. Didn't anyone ever tell you the words of our great leader Joshua 100 years ago? If you turn your back on your God, you'll become just like the Canaanites. Vile, stupid, lazy, smelly, completely lacking in any sort of decency, and you'll be punished and punished and punished and..." Oh! The old man collapsed, coughing, back into the corn. "Well, somebody should do something about it," said the young man indignantly. "Exactly. Someone should get a chopper and chop the goddess's altar into 1,000 pieces. That's right. And someone should tell the Israelites to rise up, because we're not going to be pushed around anymore. Yes. And someone should drive the Canaanites out of this country and into the sea." "Go on, then." "What?" "Go on, then." "Who, me?" "Well, if you don't, who will?" Right, said the young man. Right, I will then. And he climbed over the wall and into the village square. His servant Pura was just putting his socks back on when the young man came striding over. Pura, he said, fetch me an axe. Oh, why is that, sir? Because I'm going to chop up the goddess's altar into 1,000 pieces. Oh, that'll be nice, sir. Then I'm going to lead the Israelites in an uprising and we're going to send the Canaanites back where they came from. What, to Canaan, sir? Yes, exactly. But that's here, sir. They won't have very far to go, will they? Look, don't you get cheeky with me. You just get me an axe. All right, sir, but first things first, we've got half the Canaanite army in the valley. What do you think will happen if you chop up the goddess in broad daylight? Won't be you who ends up in 1,000 pieces, will it? Wouldn't it be better if we waited till after dark? Next morning, a short-sighted little old lady came shuffling out of her house to give a bunch of dahlias to the goddess like she always did every morning. Just a minute. Something was wrong. What was it? She cleaned her glasses and put them back on again. Ah! The goddess had been hacked to pieces. Her altar had been hacked to pieces, and the whole works had been chopped up into little bundles of firewood and stacked in front of the altar of the god opposite. And on the god's altar, there were great big bunches of lovely flowers and big loaves of bread and great baskets of corn and fruit and vegetables, like a gigantic harvest festival. And picked out in poppies above the altar were the words, "The God of the Israelites is a God of peace." And that takes a heck of a lot of poppies. More and more villagers came rushing out into the square, and they were terrified. What would the Canaanites do when they saw this little lot? They'd have to find out who'd done it, and when they found him, they'd... But who could it be? Who'd be stupid enough? Who'd be brave enough? Look, somebody said, bloodstains. And sure enough, whoever had chopped up the altar had cut themselves and left a little trail of blood. The villagers followed it across a couple of gardens, down a little side street, past the bike sheds, round the corner, and into the back door of a tiny little house. The little old man was just making himself a cup of hot chocolate when suddenly 50 villagers burst into his kitchen and started firing questions at him, shaking their fists at him, making accusations, accusing him of idol smashing. Just a minute, he said. Just a minute, I'll go and get my lad. Gideon! Gideon! He called. Come down here, there's some people want to see you. There was a pause, then footsteps. Then the young man was standing there with a big bandage round his finger. Sorry to keep you waiting, he said. I was just putting some stuff on this cut. Kill him, went the villagers. They went bananas. They grabbed him by the neck, hurled him out of the kitchen and back into the square. Then they tied him up, raised their knives above their heads and... Hang on a minute. It was Gideon's servant, Pura. Excuse me if I'm speaking out of turn, but isn't this here goddess supposed to be all-powerful? Yeah, she is, agreed the villagers. Extremely all-powerful. Well, shouldn't she be doing the killing then? Yeah, suppose so. Yeah, said the villagers. Right, well, you let go of my master and we'll let the goddess sort him out. Then Pura sat Gideon on the bundles of firewood and he looked up into the heavens and he shouted, "O great all-powerful goddess, when I say now, sendeth down a bolt of lightning to frieth your enemy Gideon, so that he sizzleth like the last sausage on the barbecue. Now!" The villagers waited for the explosion, but nothing happened. I said, "Now!" Still nothing. Wake up, you daft old bat! Absolutely nothing. Come on! If you're not complete, absolute, useless, no good, no-no, then send down one of your totally inaccurate missiles and zap my master right here, right now. Because if you don't, if you haven't got the guts, then you're nothing, and your stupid Canaanites are nothing, and you're all a bunch of fat-bottomed dimbos. The Israelites couldn't believe their ears. They stepped back and put their hands over their eyes to avoid the conflagration which would come down from the heavens any second now. But nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. Then Pura untied Gideon, who turned to the villagers and said, "Do you know why I smashed up that altar? Because I'm fed up with being treated like a second-class citizen. I'm an Israelite. I'm going to worship my God as I want and farm my land as I want. Who's with me?" Me, said his father. Me, said Purah. Me, said the lady next door and the man at the corner shop and the woman at number 46. And soon all of the villagers had lifted Gideon up onto their shoulders and they were carrying him round and round the village square. Send a message to all the Israelites, he shouted, to the tribes of Dan and Asher and Naphtali. Tell them the Israelites are on the warpath. We're going to raise the biggest army the Middle East has ever seen, and we're going to wipe the Canaanites off the face of the earth! I'm not so sure about this, said Purah. It was a few evenings later. He and Gideon were sitting on the hillside, looking at the blazing fires of the 1,000 Israelites who'd volunteered for the big battle. Suppose you're wrong, insisted Purah. Suppose our God doesn't give a toss about us. Then you'll be leading this little lot to the slaughter, won't you? That wouldn't be very nice. I know, said Gideon. I'll tell you what, we'll have a test. And he started to take off his woolly. I'm going to leave this woolly up on the hillside for the night. In the morning, if there's dew on the woolly, but not on the grass, then I'll know that our God's using me to lead our people to victory. If not, we'll jack it in and go home, said Purah. That's right, said Gideon. And off he went down the hillside. Dew on the woolly, but not on the grass, mumbled Purah. The man's a nutcase. Next morning, they were back again. The ground round the woolly was completely dry. There wasn't a drop of dew to be seen. Then Purah picked up the woolly. Oh, it was disgusting. It was all cold and wet and ugh. He wrang it out. There was enough water to wash an elephant. You see, told you, crowed Gideon. This proves that the God of the Israelites is on our side. We can go into battle certain of victory. Hold your horses, hang about, not so far, said Purah. How do we know that that wasn't a coincidence? How do we know that some big, fat, wet sheep didn't just come along in the night and sit on it? It's all very well you thinking it's some great sign from the heavens, but try telling that to 1,000 dead Israelites. I know, said Gideon. That crossed my mind too. I'll tell you what, we'll have another test. I'll leave the woolly out again tonight, and in the morning, if the ground round the woolly is all wet and the woolly's dry, we'll know we can go into battle. And off they went. Next morning, they were back again. Slosh, slosh, slosh. The ground was absolutely covered in dew. There was enough dew to wash a whole flock full of elephants. Then Purah picked up the woolly. It was bone dry. It was as dry as a dry martini in an airing cupboard. Gideon turned to Purah. What do you think? He said. Purah put on his helmet. I think it's time to go and smash some Canaanites, he said.